Hi everyone, thank you for joining today's session targeting HCPC regulated professions and how you can prepare for your OET test. My name is Rebecca Bush, I'm the Teaching and Learning Manager at OET based in Australia, and I'm joined by my colleague Joanne Bass, Education Specialist for the EMEA region based in the UK.
Hello everyone, my name is Joanne, Education Specialist for Europe, Middle East and Africa, and welcome to today's webinar, and thank you for taking the time to join. It's lovely to have you here. So please let us know your profession and which country you're joining from, if you write this in the chat box. This is the second webinar in a series of 2, assisting OET candidates wishing to register with HCPC in the UK. So if you missed the session on Wednesday, led by my colleague Nadia Falou and attended by Tom Miller, Policy Manager at HCPC, you can watch the recording now on @officialoet YouTube or Facebook. And this session will also be available there too when we finish in an hour.
All right, let's get started. So the OET profession, the OET has 12 versions of the test, and today we are focusing on the 6 professions regulated by HCPC and how you can prepare effectively for your test.
Okay, so in today's session, we'll briefly mention listening and reading, which are the same test for all 12 professions, and then we'll go into depth about preparing for writing and speaking, which are specific to your profession. We'll tell you about some profession-specific resources for OET preparation and finish off with questions from you. Feel free to add a question at any point during the session in the chat, and we'll answer these at the end.
So as Joanne mentioned, the listening and reading subtests for OET are the same for every candidate from each of the 12 professions taking the test on the same date. The topics are all healthcare based and would be of general interest and relevance to any healthcare professional. So you might hear someone in your profession talking about their work in listening part C, or read a workplace document relating to some detail in your profession in reading part B. However, whichever topic or profession the audios or texts cover, the questions are written carefully so as not to advantage or disadvantage anyone with more or less familiarity with this context. To answer the question correctly, you won't be able to rely on your professional knowledge, but by picking out a detail in what you hear or read. Our study guide, which is a downloadable resource that we are popping the link for into the chat now, collates all our best preparation resources together in one place for all 4 subtests. Check it out for suggestions about how to get started on preparing for the listening and reading subtests. And you still have a few days to take advantage of this special discount offer available until the end of March, so just a couple more days to go, for 25% off any of our online candidate courses. Simply enter the coupon code OETReady25 at the checkout when purchasing 1 or more courses from our store.
Excellent. So let's take a look at the writing test for your profession, which for all 12 versions is to write a letter providing information about aspects of a patient's care and future needs. So this table here demonstrates the types of letter you might be asked to write in your test depending on your profession. While physiotherapists and podiatrists follow the standard 3 types of letter typically used, referral, discharge, and transfer, dietitians, occupational therapists, and speech pathologists might also be asked to write an information letter, typically to a member of the patient's family to provide information about their current care needs and how to assist with them. Radiographers may also be asked to write an information letter, but most frequently are writing a letter in response to a complaint about the conduct of a patient's procedure. So here you can see the most common workplace context for your profession. Whichever type of letter you're asked to write, though, the assessment of it and the approach you should take is the same, and this is what we'll look at next. Your writing is marked by 2 assessors using 6 criteria. You're scored for each criterion, and candidates aiming for 350, which is a B grade, typically score 2 for purpose and 5 for the other criteria. However, while you're preparing, we would always encourage you not to settle for just meeting the bar, but continue trying to improve your writing to get the highest score you can. We recommend studying the criteria, and you can bookmark them by visiting the writing page on the OET website. And we'll put a link to this in the chat box now. Now we have our OET Ultimate Guide to Writing. It's a great resource to explain each of the criteria and what the assessors are looking for in your letter to be able to give you a high score. It includes examples from 3 OET professions within it: occupational therapy, medicine, and nursing, and can be found on the same page we linked to in the chat before. And as I mentioned earlier, regardless of the type of letter you're asked to write in your test, or when you're preparing with a sample test, the approach you need to take is exactly the same. Here you can see the layout of the case notes, which will cover up to 2 sides of paper, sectioned by headings and subheadings, as well as notes, which for the purposes of this presentation, we've blanked out to make this as universal as possible for all the professions attending today. I'm going to walk you through the approach to take during the 5 minutes of reading time you have before you start writing. So step 1, start at the end of the case notes, which will give you the name or job title of the person you're writing to, why you're writing to them, and the address that you'll need to copy to the top of your letter. Step 2, return to the start of the case notes. So to find today's date contained within the sentence, assume today's date is, and your role in the patient's care. You'll also use this role to end your letter below your closing phrase. Step 3, next we're going to look at the last section of the notes, just above the writing task information, which might have the heading plan or something else. This often contains more details about your reason for writing and specific requests to include for the reader. Step 4, start reading through the case notes, looking at the details and how they may or may not be relevant to the reader based on your reason for writing. Even though you won't include all the information, it's necessary to read the full case notes so you can first understand the healthcare scenario before you communicate the details the reader needs to in your letter. Which brings us to step 5. As part of this, you can consider how the dates or times included show how the patient has been improving or declining, or simply the progress of the scenario, which will be really helpful for you to summarize in your letter rather than itemizing each exact detail. Okay, having followed this approach to the reading time, once you start writing, we recommend taking a few minutes to plan, to at least list out the topic of each paragraph so you know how you're going to organize all the details you're choosing to include. It's essential that you start your letter with a clear, high-level explanation of why you're writing to the reader. So it's immediately understanding why they are to be involved. Related to your plan is the need to organize the information in each paragraph in order of importance to the reader. The things that they need to know most should be at the beginning and not hard to find amongst the less relevant details. And your final paragraph should include the specific requests or action you need the reader to complete, and acts as a tying together of the letter by returning to the reason you gave for writing at the start. Finally, leave a few minutes to proofread your work and correct any spelling mistakes you find, and edit to include extra details you think are necessary or to delete unnecessary words. Okay. A resource to help you understand how your writing is performing against the assessment criteria is available, containing 30 candidate sample letters from across 10 OET professions. Each sample here has been graded by an OET assessor who has also provided a commentary of its strengths and weaknesses, so you can get a really good idea. And you can download the booklet from a blog article, which we're popping into the chat now.
All right, so moving on to speaking now for your profession, which similarly for all 12 versions of OET is to role play 2 conversations between a patient or carer of a patient and yourself in your professional role. To illustrate this, here are the most common workplace contexts for the conversations you will have in your role plays. In each case, the clinical setting is most common, and for all professions, including physiotherapy, it could include a consultation with either the parent of a young child or the adult child of an elderly patient. In these scenarios, the child or elderly patient is not present for the role play, and this is specified on your role card to clarify that this is just a one-on-one conversation. Your role plays are marked by 2 assessors using 2 sets of criteria. The first set covers 4 linguistic skills. Candidates aiming for a 350, which is a B grade, typically score 5 in each of the linguistic criteria. The second set covers 5 clinical communication skills, and these are how you are expected to communicate with patients as per regulatory and employment standards. These include giving information to the patient and gathering it from them, and relationship building. Candidates aiming for a 350, which is a B grade, typically score 2 in each of the clinical communication criteria. Like for writing, we encourage you not to just aim for the minimum scores, but to keep working on these skills, as any work you put into them now are going to be of use once you get into your new English-speaking workplace. You can bookmark both sets of criteria by visiting the speaking page on the OET website. Our 2 ultimate guides to speaking, one for each set of criteria, will take you through what the assessors are looking for in each case, using examples from a speech pathologist, a nurse, and a doctor. And these can be found on the speaking page that we've just added the link for. For all OET professions, the approach that you take for your role plays is the same. Here's a blanked out role card, which has the 3 main sections down the left. And we're going to go through some tips for using the 3 minutes of preparation time you have before each role play starts. So, first of all, start at the top of the role card with the setting, which tells you where the role play is taking place. This detail is useful for helping you decide an appropriate way to start the role play, including to think about whether this is an urgent or routine conversation. This links to the clinical communication criterion, relationship building, which focuses on how you start the conversation and attempt to develop rapport with the patient. Step 2. The background information next to your profession name gives you important contextual information about the conversation, including the healthcare condition and purpose of your discussion. It typically mentions the patient's age and could also include adjectives to describe how the patient is currently feeling. This information is there to assist you. The patient has the same detail on their card, so it's not something you need to ask about as part of the role play. All tasks are written so they are not gender specific to accommodate your patient, the interlocutor, being either male or female in your test. For step 3, there will typically be 5 to 6 tasks listed out. And these are to ensure you have enough content to maintain the conversation for the full 5 minutes, therefore giving the assessors enough examples of your speaking skills to be able to mark you. The verbs that start each card explain what function of English you need to demonstrate in that task, and again, allow you to provide the assessors with a range of your English skills. The 2 role plays you complete are likely to be quite different, which is a further opportunity to demonstrate the range of your speaking skills. You don't need to complete all of the tasks within the 5 minutes, but think about which ones can be completed quite quickly and which ones will need more time to cover, allowing the patient opportunity to contribute. Each task includes details in brackets, which you can use to provide more information to the patient. These examples also ensure you're not being tested on your professional knowledge and instead your ability to communicate given information to a patient or carer. Once the interlocutor tells you it's time to start the role play, aim to start confidently and appropriately. You might find it helpful to note down the exact phrase or statement you want to use to start. Incorporating the patient's perspective is one of the clinical communication criteria. So it's important that you balance speaking with listening and then responding to the patient, picking up on the information they've given you. It's important to show empathy. It may help to imagine this is a real patient and to remember that this is likely the first time they are having this conversation about their health with someone. They might be feeling anxious, frustrated, could even be happy, but empathy allows you to show you care and understand their feelings. For similar reasons, don't rush. A steady pace, including regular pauses, will be easiest for your patient to understand you and allows them space to ask questions or clarifications if they have them. Finally, keep going until the interlocutor informs you the role play has ended. The more evidence you provide the assessors, the more they have to work on in being able to score you against the assessment criteria. We also have a booklet of graded candidate samples containing 30 audio and transcript samples across 10 professions for speaking. So you can listen to someone from your profession completing a role play, or someone from a different profession who was graded at the grade you are aiming for, to notice what they were doing that the assessors commented on as a strength to help you improve your performance. You can download the booklet from this article we're popping into the chat now.
Okay, so we're coming towards the end of the session content. So if you've had any questions so far, now is a good time to add them to the comments because we'll be getting to them at the end of the session. And I'll also just add in the chat box the link to the speaking booklet. So you can find that there. But before that, we're going to show you some profession-specific preparation resources that we think that you'll love. Now, if you're completely new to OET, a great place to start is with our free Intro to OET course, which is specifically for allied health professionals, as well as introducing you to all 4 subtests. You can try out test tasks and pick up tips to get your preparation off to a strong start. And it's free, and you can find it in the OET store, and there are other courses in there as well, so please do go and take a look at this, and we'll put the link in the chat box as well. And you can also find 5 free sample tests for your profession from our OET Ready pages. So these are ready to use. You can download them and practice with them. We'll be adding computer versions as well for occupational therapy and radiography within the next week, in addition to the sample test that is available for physiotherapy and the remaining OET professions. They'll be coming next. In the meantime, you can practice with the listening and the reading subtests from any of the existing computer samples. And make sure when using the answer keys that, as well as identifying which answers were right or wrong, that you also self-reflect about the reasons behind your incorrect answers, as this is really where the learning happens, that can help you avoid the same mistake another time. So we'll also just discuss how you can find an OET preparation partner. So a teacher can make a significant difference to the speed that you're able to identify and improve on your weaknesses. And we have teachers available who have been vetted and trained by OET for your profession available now. So you can find an OET teacher for your profession here. We've put a link in the chat box. And you can use the filter on the webpage here, and that will show you results for your profession only, and the contact details that you'll need as well to discuss your needs with the teacher before enrolling onto a course. Okay, and you can see here on the screen that we also have some course books. These are also available from the OET store. They are profession-specific practice books, and they contain 3 further sample tests. The books are available to purchase as physical copies or as ebooks. So you can visit the OET store here, and we'll drop that in the chat box as well. But again, just that reminder that we don't want to over-rely on sample tests. We want to make sure that if we're using them, that we're also going away and thinking about why we got those answers correct or incorrect, and then using it to help you to prepare further. So this brings us on to OET on social media. Okay, and remember that you can follow our social channels for news, events, and preparation support as you get ready for your test. And I mentioned at the beginning, we are at official OET, so you can find us there and just using that. And again, if you want to watch the session back, you can find it. It will be on the YouTube and the Facebook channel as well, and the same for the session earlier in the week. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, so we've now got some time available to answer questions you might have about preparing for your OET test. And we've had some questions coming through already, which is great. We'll get to those in a second. But if while you've been listening, you've thought of something you'd like to ask, and particularly if you're one of those 6 professions registered, regulated by HCPC, we'd love to hear from you and to offer you our advice about getting ready for OET. So just going to drop down the slides, and let's have a look at the questions going first. So Joanne, maybe you'd like to tackle this first question.
Yes, of course. So the question, thank you so much, from SBA, is the writing part the first section on exam day? It's not. So the order on exam day, you start with listening at the beginning of the day, then you move on to reading. Writing comes after that, so it's the third subtest you'll sit on the day, and then you end with speaking at the end of the day. So listening, reading, writing, speaking, that's the order that you'll take the test on the day. And thank you for the question.
So I'll take this one, which is about how can you provide more details to a patient? Can you explain with an example? So this will depend on the task you have on your roll card, if that's something that you need to complete. Sometimes candidates ask us the question, you know, can I include my own ideas or my own information? And really everything that you need to communicate is given to you on the roll card. Those ideas, as I mentioned in the speaking section, in brackets, are there to give you examples that you can use, and you don't need to go beyond those examples really. But if the task is asking you to provide more details, perhaps the patient asks you for more information about their condition, or the medication regimen, or something that they're on currently, then it's really good to try and break that down into steps or sections, using signposting words like firstly or secondly, or it could also be words like it's really important that you, or don't forget to. So you're sort of highlighting this information is important and that it contains information that hopefully they're going to remember. All right. Joanne, do you want to have a go at this question coming from a candidate on Facebook?
Sure. So, is the answers and listening part must be accurate spelling? So in the listening, there is some more flexibility, slightly more flexibility than the reading part of the test. The reading, it has to be accurate, and that's because obviously the answers that you're copying down will be written in the text, so it's about transferring accurately onto the paper. With listening, obviously you want to try and get this as close to what you hear as possible. So obviously accuracy is the most important thing. If there are exceptional circumstances, for example, dyslexia, there is a section on our website as well when you're booking your test that you can write in there any special arrangements and evidence that as well. So we would always advise to try and get this as close to the sounds that you're hearing for the listening test.
That's right. And another rule of thumb that we use for listening answers is that if the word is commonly known by a patient as well as a healthcare professional, these can be longer words, not just shorter words. So words like constipation, diarrhea, sorry, that's a bit of a theme there, but words that a patient would be very familiar with. Those words you are expected to spell correctly. It's really the technical terms that are less familiar to patients and maybe some healthcare professionals where there is that flexibility. So really, as Joanne was saying, you do need to aim to get your spelling accurate, and that's why you're given time to check your answers before moving on to the next part of the test. All right, I'm going to pick up this question from A. Mohammed on YouTube, who's saying, how can I improve my listening skills in a month? So Mohammed, there's a huge range of resources available. We covered off the study guide at the beginning of the session, and there's a link to that resource in the chat if you joined a little bit later in the session. Our recommendation would be to download that resource and have a look. It's got links to all of our best resources for listening. There's things on YouTube, there's blog articles, there's of course sample tests. There's a whole variety of resources that you can make use of, many of which are free. And they'll give you a really good grounding in the kinds of things we recommend you practicing, working on, the skills to develop to help you get test ready. All right, I'm going to pick up on this question as well, which is from Asif, who says, apologies for mentioning the specific names, but are practicing listening parts on YouTube authentic, for example, the Jashan file and benchmark? So this is a very common question as well, Asif, and it's something that we recommend you are quite careful about. There are lots of materials available that people are sharing online for the best of intentions, but a lot of those materials are often quite poor quality and actually misrepresent the OET test. The ways they may misrepresent the test is they use perhaps different question types to the ones that you will find in the listening test, or perhaps the challenge of those tasks is a lot easier or a lot harder than what you will face on your test day. So be really careful about using materials that you're picking up from unofficial places. Obviously, we recommend and we can guarantee any resources that you find from at official OET or OET.com will be of the right standard and quality. That goes for the materials that are available in our OET store as well. We can also recommend the resources that come from our listed preparation partners. Joanne showed you how to find those on the website as well. Those listed partners have been through training. They've been vetted by OET to make sure that the quality of their materials is also up to our standards. So materials coming from those partners and from official sources can be trusted, but I'd be very cautious about using anything else, including some of those that you've mentioned in your comment. All right, let's see. Just wondering, Joanne, do you want to pick a question if there's one that you like the look of?
Let's have a look. I think there was, let's see. So there's a question here that's just come in. Can we have more official materials from Lynn? So you might have heard, and if you were here earlier in the session, some of the resources that we mentioned. So we do have the official sample tests on the website. So those are free and you can download those and use those as you wish. We also have the guides that we mentioned, the booklets with the additional sample tests with the graded samples, so you can see assessor commentaries as well. The link to that is also in the chat box if you scroll further up. The practice books as well that we have, those also contain additional samples, so you can find more there. There's some brilliant resources. We have the official OET practice books. We also have the Cambridge trainer books, which contains additional samples. There's the Cambridge Guide to OET Nursing, which is useful for all professions and covers examples from all professions as well. So these are all in the OET store that you can find. So I hope that's helpful for you.
Great, thank you. I'll answer this question, which is, what are the common words which are not preferred in the writing test? When we talk about not preferred words, again, this is something candidates sometimes ask us, particularly related to the types of connectors that candidates might think of using in their paragraphs, in their writing. This is often the reason they're asking is can they use words like moreover or furthermore? And we may say, or you may hear us give advice that those kinds of words are not typically used for healthcare letter writing. They're more suitable for essay writing, academic style of essay writing. And so the way that we sort of try and help candidates to look at it is the purpose of OET writing is for you to communicate important information about a patient's care. And you're not trying to show off to the assessor or even in real life show off to the other healthcare professional. You're literally trying to communicate important information, respecting their time as a busy healthcare professional and not overdoing it with unnecessary words. So really all we're saying is with OET writing, focus on communicating that information. If a word is not adding anything to the sentence or helping clarify the situation for the writer, we would say that that kind of word can be omitted. If you remember when we looked earlier at the assessment criteria for writing, one of the criterion is called conciseness and clarity. Conciseness really means to communicate information in as few words as possible. Another way of describing that is to be succinct. And this is a skill that takes time to be developed, but is very highly regarded in the healthcare profession, because, as I said, it really respects the busyness that many healthcare professionals are under. And so, yeah, if you are succinct, if you are concise, you are not adding unnecessary words. So that's, I think, perhaps where this question is coming from. Otherwise, there are no sort of words that we say particularly avoid or can't be used. It really comes down to, is that word or is this phrase really clearly communicating information to the reader?
Mm.
I'll pick up this question as well from Snis Khan on Facebook, who says, I have some problems while hearing through headphones. Can I get another option for listening? Yes, and this is a good point to pick up for all candidates. OET aims to give all candidates equal opportunity for their test. So if you have any kind of impediment or difficulty, that means you can't, like this candidate is saying, listen easily through headphones, then at the time of booking your test, you can request special arrangements on the computer version of the test. That's called testing accommodation. What this means is you would submit as part of your application evidence from a doctor to support what you're saying in terms of the need that you have. This is then checked by our customer care team, and provided this is something that we can see verified by the healthcare professional, they will make arrangements to give you, in this case, perhaps the ability to sit in your own room for the listening test and listen directly to the speaker. So absolutely, if you have any kind of special need that you need support for in the test, this can be things like needing to take medication during the test. It can also include pregnancy. So, for example, the need to be able to stand up during your test or to have an extra cushion. All of these things are accommodated for and just need to be requested at the time of booking your test. All right. Joanne, can you find something else?
Sure. There's a question here from A. Mohammed. How can I improve my listening skill in a month? I'm not sure if this means your test is in a month, but you can certainly improve your listening skills within a month. So my first recommendation would be to try and find out, if you can, what your listening level is at the moment. So we have a placement test called OET Pulse on our website. You can find out what your level is. So it's not the OET test, it's OET Pulse. So it's a placement test, and hopefully someone can drop this link in the chat box. It will tell you what your existing level is mapped against the CEFR, and that will tell you where you're at and how much preparation is then needed to get to the grade that you require for OET listening. But really it's about identifying the specific sub-skill that you're having challenges with. So within listening, there are lots of different listening sub-skills. So it might be listening for detail, it might be listening to get the overall gist or the main purpose, keeping track of a longer conversation. You might find that the issue you're having is you're losing your place when you're listening to a longer audio, or you're struggling to hear certain sounds. And for different languages, you'll have challenges with identifying different sounds, just because it might be a less familiar sound that's made in depending on your first language or second language. But also I would say identifying that issue and then trying to find resources that will help with that. So if it's accents and you're struggling to understand the different accents, you can find resources, expose yourself to a range of different accents to become more familiar with that. Or if it's to do with speed, you can try listening to podcasts, listening to healthcare TV shows, reducing the speed and then slowly increasing it, so you're then more familiar with a natural pace of speech. We have really useful resources on this. So we have a blog which we can try and find. it's got a list of podcast recommendations. Those are really useful if you can find healthcare podcasts. We've listed some in this blog, and it gets you used to different accents, the pace of speech, which I mentioned, and getting used to listening to someone's attitude or opinion, which will help with Part C. All of these different skills, and also healthcare TV shows as well. And we have another blog on this about how watching TV can actually help. So healthcare TV shows are a great resource. You can put the subtitles on so you can read at the same time, just helps to build your vocabulary too. So we also have our listening guides, which we can post a link to that in the chat box as well. The listening guides are so helpful. It covers part A, B, and C, and guides you through. And we also have recently run it just ended the other week, an OET Ready series, and we had the whole education team, we ran different webinars on each subtest, and one of the sessions was on listening. So you can go and have a look at that. It's on YouTube on the OET Ready playlist, and there are lots of other listening resources on our YouTube channel as well. So given a lot of different resources there, which I'm sure will be in the chat, and I hope that helps to answer that question.
Great job, Joanne. You've done a lot there. I'm going to pick up, there's a couple of questions linked to reading. So I'll pick up this one, which I've put up on the screen, but there's also a question related to this, which is, what's your advice for preparing for parts B and C of reading? So let's answer this question that's on the screen now first. So can you give us some advice about reading Part C question types and what we can expect for the solution of a variety of questions? So reading Parts B and C are multiple choice questions. Reading Part B are 3-option multiple choice questions, and reading Part C are 4-option multiple choice questions. And for each question in reading Part B, firstly, you have one text and one question, and as I say, those 3 answer options to choose from. In reading Part C, you're looking at longer texts, and there are 8 questions on 2 texts, so 16 questions in total. And each question is typically focused on one paragraph from the text. Sometimes, particularly with the linguistic questions where you may be asked about the impact of an underlined phrase, or a question around a particular word and what it means to the rest of the sentence, there might be more than one question in the same paragraph of text. But typically the questions are done in exclusion, which means you don't need to have got the previous question correct to be able to answer the next question correctly. And this can be helpful to know if you're finding a question a little bit more challenging. The skill could be to leave that question and move on to the next one, which you might find a little bit more straightforward to answer. You can then return to that more challenging question if you've got time before the end of the reading test. So in each case, for choosing between multiple choice answer options, there are a number of different strategies you can use. And as Joanne was mentioning already, there are resources in the OET blog. For example, you can visit the OET blog from the OET Ready pages that we've linked to previously in today's session. You can look up multiple choice in the search bar on OET.com, and it will bring up particularly a blog article focusing on multiple choice strategies. Also, the reading guides for parts B and C also go through strategies for answering multiple choice questions. So I think there's lots there that you can work on. And again, as we've mentioned a few times already today, the study guide contains all of these resources in one place. We've linked to that at the start of today's session. So I'd really recommend going and finding that resource. I'll go for the next question down as well, which is from Maria, who's asking, how do you separate drugs with dosages and brand in the OET letter. So this also has a blog article in its own right. If you type into the search bar on oet.com/, you'll find a really useful blog article which tackles this exact topic and shows you how semicolons are made use of to separate lists of medications, and also commas can be used in conjunction with that semicolon to separate the name of the medication from its dosage, and then a semicolon to separate the next medication coming through. All right, back to you, Joanne.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to highlight this one on the screen as well. It's not a question, but it's a comment from RN Mido. It says, "Oh, Rebecca, it's so nice to see you again after 6 months since I passed the OET. Your notes and advice are always so helpful." So thank you so much.
Thanks, Joanne. And it's really encouraging to hear from candidates when they do pass. We know candidates often feel discouraged, and I talk about in my Q&A sessions that it's human nature to perhaps comment when you've been unsuccessful or you're unhappy about something, but just as many candidates each time around are successful, they just perhaps don't make so much of a fuss about it, perhaps, or come back like Midu has and celebrated that success with us. So thank you for the comment, but also thank you for encouraging all those candidates present today.
Perfect, thank you. And then I'll just answer this one. Salmo Alaman says, "How much and time is this test?" So the test is 587 Australian dollars, and obviously you can convert that to currency. And how long is the test? So it's approximately 3 hours for the listening, reading and writing section, and then 20 minutes for the speaking subtest. And your test can take place anywhere. The speaking part of the test and the OET test can be scheduled between 8 and 8 p.m. So I'm going to drop a couple of links in the chat box. We have a whole FAQ section on our website. So this answers your question about the cost, just so you've got that to hand. And then in terms of the length of the test, I'll put this in the chat box as well.
Great, thanks, Joanne. While you're doing that, I'll cover off 3 questions that are all around booking and results and things like that. So the first one from Alan, how to check whether the booking for an exam date is full or there are seats still available. You'll need to log into your candidate account or create a candidate account first of all to start going through the booking process, and then you'll be asked for the date and preferred time if you're taking the test on computer, and that will then show you up available options for your preferred location, or you can try a different location if your preferred option isn't available. So you do need to go to the OET website, click on book a test, either set up your candidate profile if you've not done that already, or log back into your candidate profile and start making a booking process to see where is available for you. Another question linked to booking and results from Dario is saying, is there provision to repeat only one particular subtest if you've been unsuccessful in that subtest? Daria, this comes down to the regulator that you are applying to with your OET results. And I'd recommend going back to the recording from Wednesday, where Tom from HCPC talked about exactly what requirements they have for results. If you're not a candidate aiming at registration with HCPC, again, visit the OET website to see the regulator you are aiming to work for. We've got a great function available now on our website where you can even search by the results you already have and see which regulators around the world accept those results. So it puts the power in your hands, essentially. It's saying, you know, what results do you have and where can you go with them? So that's certainly something that you can use from our website. And the other question linked to results and booking of the test coming through from Lynn, who's saying a lot of organizations accept 3B grades and a C+ in writing. Why isn't there any result with 3Bs and a C? This is very similar to the answer I've just given, which is it's down to the regulator. OET does not control the results that the different regulators accept. And this is why you will see some differences between regulators even within the same country, or regulators for the same profession, but in different countries, they may have different requirements. And that's because they make their own decisions about what levels of English they consider safe and of a suitable standard for a professional they want to register to work in their English-speaking healthcare workplace. All right, so those are a few sort of technical questions. I wonder, I think, Joanne, you've really covered this one already, but maybe do you want to just give a very brief summary on what you've already covered off?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to the question we had before. Someone mentioned about having challenges with OET listening, and Manita has mentioned about struggling with reading and listening marks and how can they improve. So my advice would be the same, but I also think that sometimes with writing and speaking, those are productive skills. So you produce something and you can see, you know, that in a letter you can identify that there might be a spelling mistake, or you know, the organization of the paragraph. And with listening, and we can work on that. With listening and reading, it can sometimes feel more challenging to improve the skills, and we wonder how we can do this. So we resort to taking practice tests and then taking another practice test and hoping that each time our skills would improve. But really, it's only testing our skills rather than teaching us new things. We're not learning new things by repeatedly taking practice tests. So although they can be a really useful resource, it's again about identifying what the actual issue is with listening or with reading. So is it with reading the being able to read quickly? Is it those skimming and scanning skills that you're really struggling with? Because if that's the challenge, then you can do many practices to try and time yourself and try and locate information really quickly. If it's understanding reading Part C questions, and you find that it's the questions about the writer's attitude and opinion, and you really struggle to identify those kind of answers, you can try reading more texts similar to those that you might find in reading Part C, those longer kind of articles, and getting used to the sort of language, identifying facts versus opinion. And again, there are blogs on this as well. There's so much information on how to do this in the reading guides as well. So again, we keep talking about these, but they are so helpful. So it's really exposing yourself to the kind of you know, audio resources, reading texts, sometimes even just building up a habit of reading each day. And again, there's a blog on that as well, how to develop a reading habit. And you can also read things that you find enjoyable, as well as healthcare related texts. It's going to help your grammar, it's going to help your vocabulary, but definitely try and identify what the actual issue is that you're having with those skills. So if you've done a practice test, go back through it and try and find the sort of questions that you're getting wrong, or what is it that I'm struggling with exactly, and then you can then really focus on those sub skills within the skill. So I hope that answers that question. And there are quite a lot of questions as well, which unfortunately we can't cover today because this is related to preparation, just on topics such as you know, HCA roles for New Zealand. We have a question on that, and some about roles within the NHS. So I'm going to share in the chat, you know, if you would like any information about jobs in the UK, you can find this information at NHS Jobs, and any information about recruiters. There's also a page that we have about who recognises OET, and it shows you the scores required. So I'm going to post these links in the chat box for those people as well. And sorry that we can't go into those sorts of questions today.
Thanks, Joanne. We've got just a few more minutes to answer maybe one or two more questions. So this question from Mahesh: why doesn't OET provide feedback on the answers and the question paper specifically, or especially in listening and reading, to candidates? So Mahesh, we are the same as other high stakes tests that are available to students around the world. It's not something that is offered as part of any test at the moment, that this sort of granular feedback I think that you're asking for. However, what you get with your OET result is not just your letter grade, but you get a numerical score, and that score shows you how close you are to perhaps achieving the grade that you want, and therefore sort of how much improvement you need to make to get the grade that you're working for another time. So definitely paying attention to the numerical score will help you understand, you know, are you a long way from achieving the score you require, or are you quite close? This is another reason that we recommend studying with a teacher, because if you have completed sort of analysis of your answers during practice, or you've reflected on the typical kinds of mistakes that you're making, but by yourself, you're not finding that you're making the progress that you want, or you're not seeing improvements to the extent that you want, this is where a teacher can really come in very useful. They can talk you through the approach that you're currently taking. Specifically, you're asking about listening and reading, so they can go through and ask you to tell them, you know, how are you choosing your answers? What are you finding difficult? They can look at your answers to a sample test, for example, and give you advice on where they're seeing the mistakes come through and how they can advise you to avoid those next time. So sometimes it does require help from an expert, rather than just studying by yourself to be able to see your weaknesses. Sometimes we can gloss over our imperfections, whereas a third party will be able to look at it more clinically and say, no, I'm afraid this is where you're making a mistake, and this is how you can improve on it. Joanne, do you want to take this question?
Yes, so there are a range of different accents. So we have obviously UK, we have New Zealand, we have Australian accents. We've also recently added more American accents as well to make sure that we have more variety. So we realised that we needed to have more of those. And Rebecca, have I missed any from that list?
No, those are the main ones. All right, so let's just have two questions to finish off. Joanne, do you want to follow up with this question? Obviously, to mention HCPC is not regulating nurses.
Yes, of course. Sorry, just saw the question. Yeah, so yeah, HCPC only recognises the allied health professions, so not nurses. So for nursing, it's the NMC, that's the regulator, the Nursing and Midwifery Council. So you will want to have a look at that website to check the scores. If it's the NMC in the UK that you're registering with. So if it's HCPC, though, you can watch our webinar which was earlier in the week. You can find that on our YouTube channel or Facebook, and Tom and Nadia both talk through everything about the new HCPC recognition and how to go about registering.
Great.
So thank you very much.
All right, the last question for today from Sally, who's saying, is it okay to write 1 to 2 extra words in reading, including the answer? I think the best way to think about writing down answers to reading part A, and this is something covered in sessions that I think Joanne was mentioning in earlier resources. Sorry, I'm getting feedback. Joanne, would you just mind muting for a second? Is it okay to include, so sorry, what I was saying was, imagine that you have been asked the question verbally by a colleague. For example, they might say, how much morphine do I need to give this patient? You wouldn't respond verbally by saying, oh, you should give this patient this amount of morphine. You would just call back the amount, and because that is the information that your colleague is asking you for. So similarly, when you're reading test in reading part A, you only need to write down the answer that answers the question, or the detail that answers the question. You don't, and you shouldn't include additional words, and you're likely to score 0 for that answer if you do, because that is not the test. The test is to write down a word or phrase to answer the question or to fill in the gap. So we've got lots of resources to help with that, but yeah, be careful about adding unnecessary extra words for the reading test. All right, do you want to try unmuting? I'm not sure what was happening there, but let's finish the session by saying thank you to everybody for coming along. It's been great having all these questions coming through. I know I've really enjoyed it.
Likewise. Yeah, we've had a really active chat box, so many questions coming through, and thank you so much for submitting those. Sorry if we didn't get round to answering all of them. There are so many that keep coming through here, but we really
it's worth
appreciate
mentioning then perhaps that our colleague Shekinah will be back with a regular Q&A that we do for all professions, not just for the HCPC professions. She'll be back with that next week, and this is a fortnightly event that OET put on, and you can turn up and ask any questions that you like about your preparation, and Shekinah has an hour dedicated just to answering those questions. So if we didn't get to yours today, do make sure you join her next week.
And you can find that again on the Facebook stream and the YouTube stream as well, and it's completely free.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's call it a day. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a lovely rest of the day.